Put that filthy hand away. Judge Grayson knocked Maya's hand aside before she could lower it. I don't shake hands with people of your color. Maya Williams stood frozen. She was about to explain, but Judge Grayson cut her off before she could get a single word out. Don't, he said sharply, raising one hand as if the very sound of her voice offended him. Don't stand there and dress up your arrogance as respect. He looked her up and down with open contempt. You walked into this courthouse looking like you got lost on your way to a bus station, he said. And now you expect me to believe that handshake was about respect? No. People like you always call it respect, when what you really want is permission to feel equal in a room you never earned the right to enter. Before Maya could answer, Grayson lifted the slim black cane resting beside his chair and pressed it hard against her shoulder, pushing her back as if her presence alone had crossed some invisible line. The motion was quick and humiliating. Maya staggered half a step, clutching the worn leather folder to her chest as the room fell into a deeper silence. Grayson rested the cane again, his expression cold and satisfied. There, he said. Now perhaps you understand boundaries. Maya held her injured hand against her coat. The sting climbed into her wrist, but her voice stayed calm. Judge Grayson, I'm not here to cross boundaries. I came to discuss the funding agreement attached to the modernization project. Grayson stared at her, then let his expression turn into open mockery. You came to discuss funding? He asked, as if the idea itself offended him. Yes, Maya replied, still standing straight. He leaned back in his chair. Don't insult this court. Maya tightened her grip on the worn leather folder. I'm not insulting anyone. Oh, I think you are, Grayson said, glancing around the table as if inviting the others to share his contempt. A poorly dressed black assistant walks into a judicial conference room carrying a folder and suddenly thinks she belongs in funding discussions. Elena's voice came out thin and fearful. Judge. Grayson ignored her and kept his eyes on Maya. You are not qualified to sit at this table. You are not qualified to speak in this meeting. And you are certainly not qualified to discuss money with people whose responsibilities outweigh your entire career. Maya did not step back. The meeting was scheduled, she said. I don't care, Grayson replied sharply. Maya tried once more, her voice controlled. The agreement review requires. I said enough. Grayson cut her off and pointed the cane toward the door. Remove her. The room froze harder than before. A security officer near the entrance looked uncertain. Maya took one step back, still holding the folder tightly. I have a right to be here. Grayson smiled with quiet contempt. No, you have access. People like you always confuse access with entitlement. The officer approached carefully. Maya tightened her grip around the worn leather folder as he reached her side. This is a scheduled review, she said, raising her voice only enough for everyone at the table to hear. You are making a formal record of how this court treats representatives invited into its process. Grayson scoffed. She thinks carrying paperwork makes her important. The officer lightly guided Maya toward the door. She resisted for 2 steps, not violently, but enough to show she was not leaving willingly. At the doorway, she stopped and turned back. Judge Grayson, she said quietly, forcing the words past the pain in her hand. Dignity is not something you grant from behind a table. Grayson leaned on his cane. And authority is not something you borrow by carrying a folder. Maya looked at him for a long second. No, she said. It is something people reveal by how they treat those they think have none. Then she walked out. Maya walked past them while her hand still hurt, though the silence inside that room hurt more. At the elevators, Elena caught up to her, breathless and ashamed. Miss Williams, she whispered. I'm sorry. I should have said something. Maya looked at her and saw both shame and fear in the woman's face. I hope someday, Maya said softly, this courthouse becomes easier to defend. Elena had no answer. The elevator doors closed. Minutes later, Maya stepped through the courthouse lobby and out beneath the massive stone entrance. The Brooklyn morning had turned gray. Traffic rolled below. A yellow cab sounded its horn, and cold wind moved between the courthouse columns. Maya started down the long stone staircase toward the street. The steps were wide, steep, and worn with age. By the third step, the weight of what had just happened hit her all over again, leaving her dizzy with humiliation and the sting still burning across her hand. Her vision blurred for half a second. Her foot slipped, and the edge of the stone vanished beneath her. Maya lurched forward, nearly losing the folder from her arms. Instinct took over. She threw her weight sideways and grabbed the cold gray iron railing with both hands. Her injured hand screamed with pain as her body slammed against the rail. For one terrifying second, she hung there, breathing hard above the steep courthouse stairs dropping toward the Brooklyn sidewalk below. Maya kept hold of the railing until her breathing steadied. Slowly, she straightened. Her knuckles had gone deeper red now. She looked back once at the towering courthouse behind her. Inside, Judge Grayson believed he had put an unimportant young woman back in her place. Outside, Maya Williams stood alone on the courthouse steps, one hand still gripping cold iron to stay upright. And somewhere inside that building, $500 million still waited for a signature no one had bothered to learn she had the power to give. Maya did not call Samuel from the courthouse steps. She stood there for another moment, holding the cold iron railing, letting the wind cut through the heat in her face. The red mark across her knuckles throbbed with each heartbeat. Below her, Brooklyn kept moving as if nothing had happened. Cars rolled past. A bus sighed at the curb. A man in a gray overcoat hurried by with a cardboard tray of coffee balanced in one hand. Maya breathed in slowly. She had learned, years ago, not to make decisions while pain was still speaking first. So she walked, down the rest of the stone steps, past the courthouse security line, past the food cart where steam curled from silver lids, past two attorneys arguing quietly beside a taxi. She kept the leather folder pressed against her side and moved toward a small diner 2 blocks away, the kind of place with chrome stools, old waitresses, and coffee strong enough to forgive a bad morning. The bell above the door rang when she entered. A waitress with silver hair looked up from behind the counter. "Just one, honey?" Maya nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Counter or booth?" "Booth, please." The waitress led her to a corner booth near the window. Maya sat facing the street, because after what had just happened, she did not want her back to a door. She placed the folder on the table, then rested her injured hand beside it. The waitress noticed the redness but said nothing at first. Older people who had seen enough life often knew when not to ask too quickly. "Coffee?" she asked. "Black, please." The woman poured it into a thick white mug. "Food?" Maya glanced at the menu without reading it. "Toast. Peanut butter, if you have it." The waitress gave a small smile. "We have it." When she walked away, Maya finally looked at her hand. The mark had darkened. It was not serious enough for a hospital. It was serious enough to remember. Her phone buzzed. Samuel Price. She let it ring twice before answering. "Maya," Samuel said, his voice calm but alert. "Elena Brooks just emailed my office asking if we could delay the post-review call." "What happened?" Maya looked out the window at the courthouse in the distance. "Judge Grayson refused to shake my hand," she said. Samuel was silent. "He used sanitizer first," Maya continued, keeping her tone flat. "Then he struck my hand with his cane." Samuel's voice changed. "He did what?" "He hit my hand away. Then he ordered security to remove me." "Maya, I'm all right. That was not what I asked." She closed her eyes briefly. That was Samuel. Precise, loyal, never dramatic, but never careless with truth. "I'm shaken," she admitted. "My hand hurts, but I'm all right." Samuel took a breath through his nose. She could hear it. "Tell me exactly where you are." "A diner on Court Street. I can send someone." "No." "Maya." "No," she repeated, softer. "I need 10 minutes where nobody handles me." Samuel understood that. "All right. 10 minutes. Then we talk." The waitress returned with toast and a small plastic cup of peanut butter. She set the plate down and glanced again at Maya's hand. "Door get you?" she asked gently. Maya almost smiled. "Something like that." The waitress studied her face for half a second, then nodded as if accepting the answer while not believing it. "Well, put something cold on it when you can." "Yes, ma'am." After the waitress left, Maya opened the folder. Inside were printed summaries of the Equal Justice Modernization Project, $500 million over 7 years, structured through staged disbursements, independent compliance reviews, court access reforms, interpreter expansion, digital filing upgrades, disability access improvements, and legal support for low-income adults. A project that could help thousands. A project that Judge Grayson wanted attached to his name. Maya turned a page slowly. Her hand hurt when she moved her fingers. She thought about Detroit, not in scenes, but in fragments her family had carried like old receipts. Her mother had spent years working evening administration at a neighborhood legal aid office, answering phones for adults who did not understand why a notice from the court could empty a bank account or cost them a home. Her father had repaired heating systems in public buildings, coming home with cracked hands and quiet pride. Neither of them had trusted power, but both had respected service. Her mother used to say, "The law should not be kind only to those who can afford kindness." Maya had built her life around that sentence. If Maya's strength touched your heart, please like this video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. You never know. Someone near you might be watching this story with you too. That was why she wore the plain coat, not to trick anyone, not to play poor. She wore it because rooms told the truth when they believed no important money had entered them. A silk blouse could buy smiles. A known last name could buy patience. But a plain brown coat revealed character. This morning, the courthouse had revealed itself. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Elena Brooks. "Miss Williams, I am deeply sorry for what occurred. I hope we can discuss this privately before any formal steps are taken." Maya read it twice. Privately. That was how institutions buried shame. First privately, then politely, then permanently. Samuel called again, exactly 10 minutes later. Maya answered. "I'm ready," she said. "Good," Samuel replied. "Do we suspend the site review or the full grant process?" Maya looked down at the project summary, then across the street toward the courthouse roofline. "The full grant." Samuel did not speak for a moment. "All 500 million? Yes. This will shake the entire court administration." "It should." Samuel's tone stayed careful. "Do you want the reasons stated in the suspension letter?" "No. Not yet." "Why?" "Because I don't want this reduced to my feelings. I want them to ask themselves what kind of courthouse makes this decision necessary." Samuel understood immediately. So the letter cites dignity, procedural fairness, and transparent accountability. Yes. And an independent review. That will force questions. Good. He paused. "Maya, if he struck your hand, we should preserve evidence. Photos, written account, names in the room." "I know. Do you want to file a complaint today?" Maya looked at the red mark again. "Not today." "Maya." "Samuel, I am not protecting him. I'm protecting the process from becoming sloppy." His voice softened. "That sounds like you. It sounds like my mother." For the first time that morning, silence between them felt safe. Samuel said, "I'll draft the suspension notice. I'll keep it clean." "Thank you." "And Maya?" "Yes. You were the highest-ranking person in that room, whether he knew it or not." Maya swallowed, looking back at the courthouse. "That's what troubles me," she said. "If he treated me that way with $500 million in my folder, how does he treat people who walk in with nothing but a court date?" Samuel had no quick answer. Maya closed the folder and slid cash under the coffee mug for the waitress. Before leaving, she wrapped a napkin around a piece of ice from her water glass and pressed it gently to her knuckles. Outside, the wind had sharpened. She walked back toward the foundation office, not because she was ready, but because the day had already become bigger than pain. Behind her, the courthouse stood tall and gray. Ahead of her, the money had not yet stopped, but it was about to. By the time Maya reached the Williams Justice Foundation office on Park Avenue South, the ice in the napkin had melted into a cold stain against her palm. She entered through the side door, nodded to the receptionist, and walked straight past the glass-walled conference rooms where people were already gathering around laptops and legal pads. The foundation did not look like power in the way courthouses did. There were no marble columns, no portraits of stern men in robes, no raised benches. The walls held photographs of legal clinics, community centers, adult education workshops, and volunteers sitting across from people who had nowhere else to go. It was quieter than the courthouse, but not weaker. Samuel Price was waiting outside Maya's office. He was 47, tall, careful in his movements, with the calm face of a man who had spent half his life listening to people lie under oath. He glanced at her hand but did not reach for it. "May I see?" he asked. Maya held it out. His jaw tightened. "That was done with a cane?" "Yes." "By a sitting judge?" "In front of 6 officials and a security officer." Samuel looked toward the conference room. "Then we document it now." Maya nodded. "Photos first, then the letter." Within minutes, the senior legal team had gathered. No one raised their voice. No one needed to. The room carried the weight of people who understood that a single sentence, written properly, could move more force than anger ever could. A paralegal photographed Maya's hand from 3 angles. Samuel wrote down every name Maya remembered. Another attorney opened a timeline on her laptop. Maya sat at the head of the table, her coat still on. Samuel noticed. "You can take that off." Maya looked down at the worn brown sleeves. "Not yet." He understood and did not ask again. At 11:42 a.m., Samuel read the first draft of the suspension notice aloud. "Effective immediately. Williams Justice Foundation is suspending all pending approval activity related to the Equal Justice Modernization Project, including the proposed $500 million funding package, until the court demonstrates a verifiable commitment to equal dignity, procedural fairness, and transparent accountability." The room stayed silent for a beat. Maya looked at the page. "Add independent review," Samuel typed. "By whom?" "An outside ethics and compliance panel. No one appointed by Grayson's office." One of the attorneys, Linda Marsh, looked up. She was in her late 50s, with silver glasses and the blunt voice of someone who had stopped fearing important titles years ago. "That will make them panic," Linda said. Maya's eyes remained on the document. "They should." Linda studied her carefully. "Do you want to include the physical contact?" "Not in the first letter." Samuel turned from the screen. "Maya, leaving that out gives them room to pretend this is administrative." "For now," Maya said. "I want their first reaction clean, not defensive, not rehearsed. Let them show us who they are before they know how much we have." Samuel's expression changed slightly. Approval, perhaps, or concern. With him, the two often looked alike. "All right," he said. "We send it to the court administrator, the chief administrative judge's office, and the state oversight liaison. And the board," Maya added. "I don't want them hearing this from the courthouse." At noon, the letter went out. For 4 minutes, nothing happened. Then the calls began. The first came from the court administrator's office. Samuel took it on speaker. "This must be a mistake," a strained male voice said. "We were under the impression today's site visit was procedural." Samuel replied evenly. "The foundation's position is stated in the letter. But $500 million cannot be paused over a misunderstanding." Maya leaned toward the phone. "What misunderstanding are you referring to?" The man hesitated. "Miss Williams?" "Yes. I wasn't aware you were on the line." "I am." Another pause. "Perhaps we should arrange a private discussion." Maya's face did not change. "The foundation has requested an independent review. That is the discussion." The call ended politely, which meant badly. By 12:30, 3 more offices had called. By 1:15, the university law clinic attached to the project asked whether it should pause its staffing plan. By 2, the technology vendor requested clarification. By 2:40, a civil rights organization emailed Samuel, asking why rumors were spreading that the grant had collapsed. Inside the foundation, the day tightened. Outside, New York moved on. Traffic crawled, lunch carts smoked, office workers carried salads in plastic bowls. But inside the court system, the money had stopped moving, and everyone who had built plans around it could feel the floor shift. At 3:05, Elena Brooks called Maya directly. Maya let it ring once before answering. "Miss Williams," Elena said, her voice thin. "I know you may not want to hear from me. I'm listening. I should have spoken up." "Yes," Maya said. The honesty landed harder than comfort would have. Elena took a shaky breath. Judge Grayson is furious. He's telling people you overreacted. Maya looked across the table at Samuel, who had gone very still. What else is he saying? Maya asked. That you're a junior staffer. That the foundation will send someone senior once this cools down. That no serious institution would let a young woman in a plain coat make funding decisions. Maya closed her eyes for 1 second. Not from surprise, from confirmation. Thank you for telling me, she said. There's more, Elena whispered. He asked who really controls the money. Samuel lifted his head. Maya's voice stayed calm. And what did you tell him? I said all grant communications go through Mr. Price's legal office. Maya looked at Samuel. He understood immediately. Elena continued. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to say. It's all right, Maya said. You told the truth. After the call ended, Samuel stood slowly. He's going to come to me. Yes, Maya said. He thinks I'm the adult in the room. He thinks you're the man in the room. Samuel's mouth tightened. That may be useful. Maya looked at him carefully. Samuel, I'm not suggesting we provoke him. I'm saying if he reaches out, we listen. Linda Marsh folded her arms. With counsel involved. Samuel nodded. Always. Maya stood and finally removed her coat. She laid it over the back of the chair, then looked at the red mark on her hand. He still doesn't understand what happened, she said. That may be the most dangerous part. Samuel answered quietly. No, Maya. The dangerous part is that he thinks he can fix it without respecting you. That evening, long after most offices had dimmed, Maya remained by the conference room window. The skyline had turned blue-gray. Somewhere below, horns rose and faded. On the table behind her lay the suspension letter, witness notes, photographs of her hand, and the first outline of an independent review demand. Samuel entered with 2 paper cups of coffee. You should eat, he said. I had toast. That was 6 hours ago. She accepted the coffee anyway. For a while, they stood without speaking. Then Samuel said, You know this won't stay quiet. Maya looked toward the city lights. It was never quiet. It was only contained. And when it breaks, she thought of Grayson's cane, Elena's silence, the officials staring at their papers, and the adults waiting in the courthouse halls. When it breaks, Maya said, we make sure it breaks toward the truth. Across Brooklyn, Judge Walter Grayson sat in his chambers, reading the suspension letter for the 4th time. The words equal dignity seemed to irritate him most. He tapped the page with his finger, then picked up the phone. Find me everything on Samuel Price, he ordered. If Miss Williams wants to play at power, I want to know who actually holds it. He hung up, convinced he had identified the real obstacle. He had not. He had only found the man who would make sure his next mistake was recorded. By morning, the courthouse no longer felt like a courthouse. It felt like a building holding its breath. The suspension letter had moved through offices faster than any official memo Elena Brooks had ever seen. It had gone from inbox to inbox, printed in conference rooms, whispered over coffee, and mentioned in hallways by people who lowered their voices when judges passed. By 9 a.m., every senior administrator in Kings County Courthouse knew one thing with certainty. The $500 million grant was no longer moving forward. What they did not know was why. That uncertainty made them nervous. Judge Walter Grayson stood in his chambers with the suspension letter on his desk. He had read it so many times that the phrases had begun to feel personal. Equal dignity, procedural fairness, transparent accountability, independent review. He hated the words because they sounded clean. A dirty accusation could be attacked. A clean one made people wonder what had happened. His clerk, Martin Hale, stood near the door with a notepad in his hand. Judge, the court administrator's office is asking whether you'll join the emergency call at 10. Of course I'll join, Grayson said. This is my project. Martin hesitated. They're calling it the Foundation's project now. Grayson looked up. Martin lowered his eyes immediately. Grayson took off his glasses and placed them on the desk with careful control. Who said that? I only mean, Martin said quickly. The funding documents list Williams Justice Foundation as the lead. I know what the documents list. The room went quiet. Grayson turned back to the window. From his chambers, he could see part of the courthouse steps where people came and went all day, carrying folders, fear, and hope in equal measure. He had always liked that view. It reminded him that people entered through the doors below, but he ruled from above. Now it irritated him. "What do we know about Maya Williams?" he asked. Martin glanced at his notes. 25. Director of Justice Reform Programs at the Foundation. Law background. Public policy. She's been involved in several access to justice initiatives. Director, Grayson said, as if the title tasted false. At 25. Yes, Judge. Who does she report to? The legal side goes through Samuel Price. He's the Foundation's general counsel. Grayson's eyes narrowed. There it is. Sir, there is always someone behind the child with the title. Martin said nothing. Grayson picked up the suspension letter and tapped it once against the desk. Set up a call with Price. Martin stiffened. Through official channels? Grayson gave him a cold look. No. Through common sense. At the Foundation office, Maya was already in a meeting when Samuel received the message. It came not as a formal email, but as a private note through an old legal acquaintance. Judge Grayson would like a discreet conversation with Mr. Samuel Price regarding resolution of the funding disruption, preferably off-site. Samuel read it once, then slid his phone across the table to Maya. She looked at it without surprise. Linda Marsh adjusted her silver glasses. That was fast. Samuel leaned back. He doesn't want the Foundation. He wants leverage. Maya handed the phone back. He still thinks I'm the problem he can go around. He thinks you're the obstacle, Samuel said. And he thinks I'm the doorway. Linda's expression hardened. Then we make sure the doorway has a camera. Maya looked at Samuel. You don't have to do this. Samuel's face softened, but his voice stayed firm. Maya, he struck your hand in a room full of officers of the court. Then he tried to turn your authority into a costume. If he now wants a private conversation, we need to know why. We know why. No, Samuel said. We suspect why. Evidence is better. Maya held his gaze. No entrapment. Never. No promises. No encouragement. No games. I'll ask clear questions. He can answer them or not. Linda nodded. We notify outside counsel. We document the invitation. We record only where legally permitted. Samuel looked at Maya. And if he offers something improper? Maya's eyes moved to the folder on the table, then to her hand, where the redness had faded but not disappeared. Then we let him show us who he is. The meeting was set for 6:30 that evening at the Harrington Club, a private legal club in Manhattan, where judges, senior partners, prosecutors, and retired officials still pretended the old rules of influence were manners. Samuel arrived 10 minutes early. He wore a dark suit, plain tie, and the calm expression of a man who knew silence could make guilty people fill the room for him. In his inside pocket was a small recording device, approved by counsel. On the table, he placed a pen, with a discreet camera, angled toward the chair across from him. He ordered club soda with lime. Grayson arrived at 6:34. No robe this time. Navy suit, white shirt, gold cufflinks. He smiled as though the morning had never happened. Samuel, he said, extending a hand. Samuel stood and shook it. Judge Grayson, thank you for being reasonable. Samuel sat after Grayson did. I agreed to listen. Grayson waved that aside. Listening is how reasonable men solve unreasonable problems. A server entered. Grayson ordered bourbon. When the server left, he leaned back and studied Samuel. I'll be direct, Grayson said. Miss Williams overreacted. Samuel kept his face still. To what? Grayson's smile tightened. To a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? A young person misread the tone of a serious room. Samuel let a short silence pass. Did she misread the cane? For the first time, Grayson's eyes sharpened. I moved her hand aside, he said. She was being inappropriate. By offering a handshake? By assuming familiarity. Samuel looked down at his glass, then back up. And the suspension letter? That, Grayson said, pointing slightly, is why we are here. He leaned closer. Samuel, You and I both know how these foundations work. Public mission, private politics. Miss Williams may have a title, but titles at that age are often symbolic. Someone more seasoned must understand the damage this pause creates. Samuel said nothing. Grayson took that as permission. There are partners attached to your foundation, he continued. Legal aid groups, policy shops, universities, vendors. Some of them will need favorable cooperation from this court in the future. Samuel's voice remained even. What kind of cooperation? Scheduling considerations, administrative support, judicial goodwill where appropriate. Judicial goodwill, Samuel repeated. Grayson smiled. Don't make it sound sinister. The system works better for people who know how to work with it. Samuel folded his hands. And what would you want in return? Grayson took a slow sip of bourbon. Talk to Maya, he said. Calm her down. Help her understand she is not bigger than the institution. The complaint disappears. The grant is restored. The independent review becomes internal. Everyone wins. Samuel's expression did not change. You want me to pressure Maya Williams to withdraw any complaint and approve the $500 million. I want you to guide her. And in exchange, you would use your position to benefit foundation partners? Grayson looked at him carefully, then smiled as if speaking to a man who finally understood adulthood. I would make sure the court remembers who helped preserve its future. Samuel allowed the words to sit between them. Then he asked, gently, and what about me? Grayson's smile widened. There are boards, Samuel. Advisory seats. Judicial reform panels. Men with your resume shouldn't spend their lives standing behind a 25-year-old girl who doesn't know when to stop. Samuel felt the old anger rise, but he kept it out of his face. I work with Miss Williams because she knows exactly when to stop, he said. Grayson's smile thinned. Samuel continued, and when not to. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Grayson leaned back. Be careful, Samuel. Loyalty is admirable until it becomes bad judgment. Samuel placed his napkin beside his glass. Is that advice or a warning? It is reality. Samuel stood. Grayson looked surprised. We're finished? Yes, Samuel said. I heard what I needed to hear. Grayson's eyes flicked toward the pen on the table for less than a second, then back to Samuel. He had noticed nothing. Samuel picked up the pen and slid it into his jacket. Have a good evening, Judge. As Samuel walked out into the cold Manhattan night, he did not call Maya immediately. He stood under the awning, waited for his breathing to steady, and looked at the stream of headlights moving down the avenue. Then he sent one message. He said it on camera. At the foundation, Maya read the text while standing alone in her office. She closed her eyes briefly, not in victory, in grief, because Judge Grayson had not only revealed contempt for her, he had revealed what he believed justice was worth. Samuel returned to the foundation a little after 8. Maya was waiting in the small conference room with Linda Marsh and 2 outside counsel attorneys. No one asked whether the meeting had gone well. Samuel's face already answered that. He placed the pen recorder on the table. He offered legal favors, Samuel said. Scheduling help, administrative cooperation, judicial goodwill. He also suggested advisory positions for me if I helped pressure you to withdraw the complaint and restore the grant. Linda closed her eyes for 1 second. A sitting judge said this? Samuel nodded. On camera, Maya looked at the pen. Play it. The video filled the wall screen. There was Grayson in his Navy suit, bourbon beside him, speaking with the confidence of a man who believed private rooms erased public duty. The system works better for people who know how to work with it, Grayson said on the recording. No one in the room moved. Then came the line that made Linda's jaw tighten. Men with your resume shouldn't spend their lives standing behind a 25-year-old girl who doesn't know when to stop. Maya did not flinch. That was what made Samuel look away first. When the recording ended, the room stayed quiet. Linda spoke softly. This is no longer only about misconduct in a meeting. No, Samuel said. This is corruption. One of the outside attorneys leaned forward. We should preserve the original file, create a chain of custody memo, and prepare a submission to the Judicial Oversight Commission. Maya nodded. Do it by the book. Every step. Samuel watched her carefully. And the public statement? Not yet. Linda frowned. Maya, if he starts shaping the story first, we may lose ground. Maya looked toward the dark window. Beyond it, Manhattan lights flickered like distant warnings. I know, she said, but I don't want outrage ahead of evidence. I want evidence strong enough that outrage has somewhere honest to stand. Samuel gave the smallest nod. Then we file with oversight, before we speak. Maya turned back to the screen, now frozen on Grayson's face. He still thinks this is about me being offended. It isn't, Samuel said. No, Maya replied. It's about what he does when he believes no one important is in the room. The next morning, the Foundation's formal packet went out. It included the suspension letter, Maya's written account, photographs of her injured hand, names of witnesses in the conference room, Elena's initial apology email, and the video of Grayson's private offer to Samuel. At 10:17 a.m., an automated confirmation arrived from the Judicial Oversight Commission. At 10:42, Samuel received a call from a court administrator asking whether the Foundation would consider a cooling-off period. Samuel put the call on speaker. Maya sat beside him, silent. The administrator sounded tired. Mr. Price, everyone wants to avoid escalation, Samuel replied. Then everyone should cooperate with the independent review. There are reputations involved. Maya leaned toward the phone. That was true. Before Judge Grayson touched my hand, the line went quiet. The administrator cleared his throat. Miss Williams, I didn't realize you were present. I often am, Maya said. People just seem surprised by it. After the call, Maya finally left the office for air. She walked to a small park nearby, where older men sat on benches with newspapers and office workers ate late lunches from paper bowls. A woman in a red coat fed pigeons despite the sign telling her not to. The city felt ordinary, and for that reason, almost merciful. Her phone buzzed. Evelyn Carter, Maya answered. Judge Carter, don't use my old title when you're trying to hide pain, Evelyn said. Maya almost smiled. I'm not hiding. You are always hiding when you sound that polite. Maya sat on an empty bench. Samuel recorded Grayson offering favors. Evelyn was silent for a moment. Then he gave you the truth, wrapped in arrogance. He thinks Samuel can control me. Of course he does. Men like Grayson understand loyalty only as ownership. Maya looked at her injured hand. The swelling had gone down, but the mark remained. I didn't want this to become personal, she said. It became personal the moment he decided your dignity was optional, Evelyn replied. But personal does not mean petty. Remember that. Maya exhaled slowly. Evelyn softened her voice. You don't have to become the story, Maya. But you may have to become the door other people walk through. That stayed with her. By late afternoon, the first cracks appeared inside the courthouse. Elena called again, this time from her car. I heard Oversight has the packet, she said. Yes, I need to tell you something. There are others. Maya sat straighter. Others? People who filed complaints. Staff, attorneys, interpreters. Most of it was buried as personality conflicts or courtroom management issues. Can you document that? Elena hesitated. Some of it. Then document what you can. Elena's voice trembled. I was afraid of him for years. Maya answered gently but firmly. Fear explains silence. It doesn't excuse it forever. I know, Elena whispered. That's why I'm calling. When the call ended, Maya returned to the conference room. Samuel looked up from his laptop. What is it? Maya placed her phone on the table. Grayson is not the story. He is the doorway. Samuel understood. To what? To everyone who was told they were exaggerating. That evening, Maya stood at the window again, watching the city darken. The Foundation had not gone public. The courthouse had not apologized. Grayson had not backed down. But something had shifted. For the first time since she walked into courtroom 4B's conference room, Maya no longer felt the sting in her hand first. She felt the weight of all the hands that had been pushed away before hers. And she knew the next chapter would not belong to Grayson. It would belong to the witnesses. By the next morning, the courthouse had stopped pretending. The story had not reached the public yet. But inside the building, everyone felt it. Doors closed faster. Conversations ended when supervisors walked by. People who had spent years surviving Judge Grayson's moods now watched his chambers like weather radar. At 8:15, Elena Brooks arrived carrying a canvas tote full of files she had not opened in years. She locked herself in her office, closed the blinds, and spread old complaints across her desk. Most were not dramatic. That was what made them worse. A court interpreter reporting that Grayson dismissed translation concerns as delays. A public defender noting repeated interruptions when representing low-income adults. A clerk describing how certain people were treated like problems before they even spoke. Elena read until her coffee went cold. Then she called Maya. "I have names," Elena said. Maya was already at the foundation with Samuel. "How many?" "Enough to make me ashamed." Maya did not soften the truth for her. "Send what you can verify." "I'm afraid." "I know." Elena's voice cracked slightly. "That's not enough anymore, is it?" "No," Maya said. "Not anymore." By noon, the first witness contacted Clara Bennett at the Civic Ledger. His name was Calvin Reed, a 44-year-old public defender with tired eyes and a voice that sounded like it had spent too many years staying professional. Clara met him in a quiet coffee shop near Borough Hall, where older attorneys read newspapers and office workers ate sandwiches over open laptops. Calvin placed a folder on the table. "I'm not here for attention," he said. Clara opened her notebook. "Then why are you here?" "Because I heard Miss Williams was treated like she didn't belong." He looked toward the window, jaw tight. "And I know that room." He explained that Grayson had interrupted him in court for years, often when he represented poor black adults or working-class defendants who did not know how to speak in legal language. Grayson never used obvious slurs in public. He did something harder to prove. He used tone, timing, procedure. He made people feel small while keeping the transcript clean. "He called me emotional," Calvin said. "Whenever I pushed back, that was the word. Emotional. Not prepared, not measured. Emotional." "Do you have documentation?" Clara asked. Calvin pushed the folder closer. "Dates, motions, complaints, emails to supervisors." Clara looked at the papers, then back at him. "Why now?" Calvin's face tightened. "Because when a man shows you who he is in a private room, you start wondering what he's been doing in public ones." That afternoon, Maria Alvarez called. She was 39, a certified Spanish interpreter, and she insisted on meeting at the public library because she did not want anyone at the courthouse seeing her. She wore a navy coat and kept both hands wrapped around a paper cup of tea. Judge Grayson made people feel like needing language assistance was disrespect, Maria said. Not officially, never officially, but everyone knew. She described hearings where adult immigrants grew confused, where interpretation was rushed, where her requests for clarification were treated like inconvenience. "I filed complaints," she said. "They came back as courtroom management issues." Clara wrote carefully. "Do you have copies?" Maria opened her bag and removed a thick envelope. "I kept everything." By evening, Denise Carter had emailed Samuel directly. Denise was 46, a legal support specialist who had worked with low-income adults trying to understand civil paperwork. She did not want to be quoted yet, but she attached memos, intake notes, and a spreadsheet she had maintained privately for 3 years. Samuel read the email twice before forwarding it to Maya. The subject line said, "I thought no one would ever ask." Maya sat alone with those words for a long moment. Then she opened the spreadsheet. It was quiet evidence, dates, case types, complaints, outcomes, patterns, nothing theatrical, nothing easy to dismiss. The kind of truth that did not shout because it had been waiting too long. Samuel entered her office. "Clara is verifying Calvin and Maria." Maya nodded. "And Denise?" "She's afraid. Everyone is afraid." "Yes," Samuel said. "But now they're afraid together." Maya leaned back, exhaustion finally showing around her eyes. "That may be the first honest community this courthouse has built." Samuel gave a sad smile. Not the legacy Grayson wanted. At the courthouse, Grayson was beginning to feel the walls shift. Martin Hale entered his chambers near 6 p.m. with a stack of messages. The Civic Ledger called again. Martin said. Ignore them. They asked specifically about prior complaints involving courtroom bias. Grayson looked up sharply. Who gave them that phrase? I don't know. Grayson stood and walked to the window. Below, people moved along the steps. Ordinary adults with ordinary troubles. He had always thought of them as a line to be managed. Now they looked like witnesses. Find out who is talking, he said. Martin hesitated. Judge, maybe we should consider issuing a limited apology. Grayson turned slowly. For what? For the appearance of nothing. Grayson snapped, then lowered his voice when he saw Martin flinch. I will not apologize, because a young woman misunderstood discipline. Martin said nothing. Grayson picked up his cane from beside the desk and rested both hands on it. People forget. News cycles move. Foundations negotiate. This will pass. But even as he said it, his phone buzzed. A message from a retired judge. Walter, I'm hearing troubling things. Call me before this gets worse. Grayson stared at the screen. For the first time, he did not answer. Across town, Clara Bennett sat at her kitchen table with 3 folders, 2 recordings, and a legal pad filled with names. She had enough for 1 article, perhaps 2, but she could feel the larger story underneath. This was not about one insult. It was about a courthouse that had taught decent people to whisper. Near midnight, Maya received a short message from Clara. Miss Williams, I'm preparing a story. Before publication, I'd like to offer you a chance to comment. Maya read it, then showed Samuel. What do you want to say? He asked. Maya thought of Calvin, Maria, Denise, Elena, and all the adults who had waited in that courthouse believing patience was the price of justice. Finally, she typed 1 sentence. Williams Justice Foundation does not fund systems that mistake silence for fairness. She sent it. Then she turned off the office light. The witnesses had begun to speak, and Judge Grayson had no idea how many voices were still waiting in the dark. The Civic Ledger, published at 7:03 the next morning. By 7:15, the article was already moving through courthouse phones. By 7:40, it had reached legal blogs. By 8:10, a local television producer had called Samuel's office twice. The headline was plain enough to hurt. Judge refused to shake Black Foundation director's hand. Before $500 million grant was suspended. Maya read it at her desk, with a cup of coffee cooling beside her. Clara Bennett had written the story carefully. No exaggeration, no cheap outrage, just the facts. The scheduled review, the suspended grant, the witnesses in the room, the foundation statement, and the first verified accounts from Calvin Reed and Maria Alvarez. Then came the audio. Maya heard Grayson's voice through her laptop speakers. Put that filthy hand away. She closed the screen before the rest played. Samuel stood near the window, reading the article on his phone. Clara didn't mention the cane. Good, Maya said. She didn't mention the video with me either. That goes to oversight first. Samuel looked at her. You still want to hold it? For now. The phone rang. Linda answered on speaker from the conference room. A court communications officer spoke too quickly. The courthouse is preparing a statement. We wanted to confirm whether the foundation is willing to clarify that the suspension was not based solely on a personal exchange. Maya walked in and leaned toward the phone. It was based on institutional conduct. The officer paused. That phrase is broad. So was the silence in that room. No one on the other end responded. By mid-morning, Judge Grayson appeared on a local news program from a studio with a blue backdrop and a flag behind him. He wore a dark suit and the stiff expression of a man trying to look wounded instead of cornered. Maya, Samuel, and Linda watched from the conference room. The interviewer asked, Judge Grayson, did you refuse to shake Miss Williams's hand? Grayson folded his hands. This is not about race. This is about respect for the court, Linda muttered. There it is. Grayson continued. A courthouse is not a stage for political theater. I regret that my words were misunderstood, but I will not apologize for defending the dignity of an institution. I have served for more than 30 years. Samuel's face hardened. He regrets our ears. The interviewer pressed him. Did you call her poor? I questioned whether the foundation had sent an appropriate representative for a serious legal discussion. Maya looked at the screen without blinking. Grayson leaned forward slightly. Miss Williams is young. I suspect she was overwhelmed by the seriousness of the environment. That is unfortunate, but it should not determine the future of a $500 million public project. Maya turned away from the screen. Samuel reached for the remote and lowered the volume. Do you want to respond? No, Maya said. Linda looked surprised. No? He wants me to defend my maturity. I won't make his prejudice the center of my resume. The program ended with Grayson promising to cooperate with any reasonable review. 10 minutes later, his office released a written statement calling the suspension an emotional reaction to a misinterpreted exchange. That phrase traveled fast. Emotional reaction. By noon, Maya's inbox was full. Some messages were supportive. Some were ugly. Many came from people she had never met. Adults who wrote about courtrooms where they had felt small. Offices where they had been ignored. Judges who had never learned their names. One message was from Calvin Reed. He wrote, "Don't let them make you explain your tone. Make them explain their record." Maya stared at the sentence for a long time. At 1:20, Samuel's phone rang. He looked at the screen, then at Maya. "Grayson, put it on speaker," Linda said. Samuel answered. Samuel Price. Grayson's voice was tight, under a layer of practiced calm. "You should think carefully about where this is going." Samuel said nothing. Grayson continued. "She will drag both of us down if you keep letting her act emotionally." Maya stood very still. Samuel's voice remained measured. "Judge, who is she? You know exactly who I mean. Miss Williams?" A pause. "Yes, Maya Williams. Someone needs to help her understand consequence." Samuel glanced at Maya. "She understands consequence better than most people I know." Grayson exhaled sharply. "Loyalty is admirable, Samuel, until it becomes bad judgment. You said that before, and I meant it." Samuel looked at the recorder already running on the table. "Is there anything else, Judge?" "Yes. Tell her the quickly bullied by a girl with a foundation title and a wounded ego." Maya closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. Samuel's voice went colder. "Goodbye, Judge." He ended the call. Linda saved the recording. Maya walked to the window. Below, the city moved with its usual indifference. People crossed streets, carried groceries, checked watches, argued into phones. Life did not stop because someone powerful revealed himself. That was the hard part. The world kept asking injured people to continue being useful. Samuel came beside her. "That call helps establish pattern." Maya nodded. "You okay?" She looked at him. "I'm tired of being called emotional by men who panic every time they lose control." Samuel almost smiled. "That should be in a statement." "It won't be." "No, but it should." By late afternoon, the article had reached statewide legal circles. Retired judges began calling one another. Law professors posted cautious comments. Civil rights organizations demanded an independent investigation. The court administration announced that it was reviewing the matter internally, which satisfied no one. Then Clara called Maya. "I have more witnesses," she said. "How many?" "Enough that I'm not publishing all at once." Maya sat down slowly. "Are they safe?" "They're adults, and they know the risks. Some want names attached, some don't. Verify before publishing." "I always do." There was a pause. Clara's voice softened. "Miss Williams, do you want to tell me about the cane?" Maya looked at her hand. The mark had faded to a dull shadow. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because if the public sees pain first, they may miss the pattern. Lead with the pattern." Clara was quiet for a moment. "That's a hard discipline." "It's not discipline," Maya said. "It's experience." That evening, Grayson sat alone in his chambers while the courthouse emptied around him. His television appearance played on a tablet, muted. He watched his own face, trying to decide if he had looked authoritative or defensive. The answer made him angry. Martin Hale knocked once and entered. "Judge, the chief administrative office wants you available tomorrow morning." "For what?" "They didn't say." Grayson picked up his cane and tapped it once against the floor. "They're afraid of headlines." Martin swallowed. "Maybe they're afraid of evidence." Grayson turned toward him slowly. Martin lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry, Judge. You should be." When Martin left, Grayson looked back at the frozen image of himself on the screen. For the first time, he wondered how much Samuel Price had told Maya. Then he wondered how much Samuel had kept. Across town, Maya finally left the office after dark. Samuel walked her to the elevator. "Tomorrow will be worse," he said. Maya pressed the button. "No, tomorrow will be clearer." The doors opened. Before stepping inside, she looked back at him. "Send the Grayson call to oversight with the rest." Samuel nodded. As the elevator doors closed, Maya held the folder against her chest and felt the day settle over her like weight. But beneath the exhaustion was something steadier. Grayson had tried to make the story about her age, her coat, her tone, her hand, her feelings. Now his own voice had entered the record again. And records, unlike frightened rooms, did not look away. The next morning, Maya arrived before most of the staff. The foundation office was still dim, with only the reception lights on and the low hum of the copy room running somewhere down the hall. She carried black coffee in one hand and the same worn folder in the other. Her injured hand had faded from red to a dull bruise, but it still tightened when she bent her fingers. Samuel was already in the main conference room. On the table were 3 labeled files: original incident, private meeting, subsequent call. Maya looked at them. "You didn't sleep." "Enough," Samuel said, which meant no. Linda Marsh entered behind him with a legal pad and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Oversight confirmed receipt of the supplemental recording. They're opening a preliminary inquiry. Maya took that in quietly. "How soon?" "They want witness availability by tomorrow," Samuel added. "They also asked whether you are willing to testify if the matter moves to a formal hearing." Maya set her coffee down. "Yes." Linda studied her. "You don't have to decide this second." "I just did." Samuel leaned back in his chair. "Maya, once you testify, Grayson's attorneys will try to make you the issue. They already have. In a hearing, they'll do it under oath. In public, with cameras outside." Maya looked toward the window where morning light had begun to touch the city. "Then I'll answer. Under oath, in public, with cameras outside." Linda nodded once, not approving lightly, but recognizing a decision that would not be moved. At 9:30, Clara Bennett called. Her voice carried the strain of someone who had been awake since before dawn. "I have confirmation from 3 additional sources. Oversight is asking questions inside the courthouse. Grayson's office knows." "What are you publishing?" Maya asked. "Not the video. I don't have it. I'm publishing the pattern. Prior complaints, interpreter concerns, public defender accounts, and the court's failure to review them seriously." Samuel's eyes shifted to Maya. Maya said, "Use what you can verify." "I will. But I need to ask you directly. Did Judge Grayson strike your hand with his cane?" The room went still. Maya looked at Samuel, then at Linda. "Yes," she said. "May I report that?" "Not from me yet." Clara was quiet. "I understand." Maya heard the disappointment, but also the respect. "Miss Bennett, when that detail appears, people will feel the pain before they see the system. I want the system seen first." Clara exhaled softly. "Most people would lead with the bruise." "Most people? I'm not most people." "No," Clara said. "You're not." After the call ended, Samuel folded his hands. "That detail won't stay hidden. I know. Someone in that room will talk. Then let them. It matters that I didn't use it first." Linda looked over her glasses. "That is either very wise or very hard on you." Maya picked up her coffee. "Both." At the courthouse, Judge Grayson's morning began badly. Martin Hale stood in the doorway of chambers with a printed email in his hand. "Oversight is requesting preservation of records." Grayson did not turn from the window. "What records?" "Communications related to the foundation, the modernization project, prior complaints, and any contact with Samuel Price." Grayson turned then. Martin looked miserable. "All contact, Judge." Grayson's face stiffened. "That is routine." Martin said nothing. "Do not look at me like that," Grayson snapped. "I'm not looking any way. You are looking like a man deciding which side of a door he wants to be on." Martin lowered his eyes. I'm trying to follow procedure. Then follow it. Martin placed the email on the desk and left. For several minutes, Grayson stood alone. The courthouse below was busy, but the sound did not reach him clearly through the glass. He felt sealed off from the building he had spent decades believing he controlled. Then his private phone rang. It was Judge Albright. Retired. 72. Once a mentor. Now a man who spoke only when silence would be cowardice. Walter, Albright said, tell me you did not meet Samuel Price alone. Grayson gripped the phone. I had a professional conversation. Did you offer anything? I discussed paths to resolution. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I intend to give. Albright sighed. You always thought the robe made the man larger. It doesn't. It only makes the fall easier to see. Grayson ended the call without saying goodbye. At noon, the Civic Ledger published Clara's second piece. This headline was worse for Grayson because it moved beyond one morning. Prior complaints against Judge Grayson raise questions about bias, court culture, and ignored warnings. The article named Calvin Reed and Maria Alvarez. Denise Carter remained anonymous, but her data appeared in summary. Clara did not write like a prosecutor. She wrote like a builder placing bricks. One complaint, then another, then another. By the end, the wall was visible. Maya read it in her office. Samuel stood beside the door. Calvin put his name on it. He's brave. So did Maria. Maya closed the article. They shouldn't have to be brave to tell the truth. No, Samuel said. But they are. By mid-afternoon, calls came from national outlets. Maya declined all interviews. The foundation issued one written statement. Williams Justice Foundation believes public trust requires more than private assurances. We support a full, independent review. Grayson's office issued no statement. That silence became its own headline. At 4, Elena arrived at the foundation. She wore a gray coat and carried a folder so tightly the edges bent. In the conference room, she sat across from Maya and Samuel, unable to lift her eyes at first. I have copies, Elena said. Complaint summaries, internal notes. Not everything, but enough to show they were routed away from review. Samuel reached for the folder, then stopped. Are you giving these voluntarily? Yes. Do you understand this may affect your position? Elena gave a tired smile. Mr. Price, my position has affected my conscience long enough. Maya looked at her differently then. Not with forgiveness yet, but with respect for a first honest step. Elena turned to Maya. I should have stopped him when he touched you with that cane. Maya's face remained calm. Yes, Elena nodded, accepting the word like a sentence. I'm ready to say that. Under oath. That was the moment the room changed. Not because Elena's courage erased her silence, but because it finally interrupted it. That evening, the foundation sent Elena's documents to oversight through counsel. Samuel stayed late to prepare witness summaries. Linda coordinated chain of custody notes. Maya remained in the conference room, reading the names of adults whose complaints had been minimized, softened, renamed, or buried. Bias issue became personality conflict. Interpreter concern became scheduling frustration. Pattern of interruption became courtroom management. Maya underlined the phrases until the page looked wounded. Samuel noticed. You should go home. In a minute. You've said that 3 times. She looked up. Do you ever wonder how many systems survive because decent people keep renaming harm? Samuel sat across from her. Every day. Maya closed the folder. Outside, night pressed against the windows. Inside, the files sat in neat stacks, calm and devastating. Grayson had tried to make Maya disappear from his conference room. Now every buried record seemed to be taking a seat at the table. By Friday morning, the story had grown legs strong enough to walk without Maya. It moved through bar associations, courthouse break rooms, retired judges' circles, legal aid offices, and church basements, where older residents still trusted coffee, folding chairs, and plain speech, more than press conferences. People were no longer asking only what Judge Grayson had said to Maya Williams. They were asking how many people had been quietly taught to accept the same treatment without a foundation behind them. At the courthouse, that question felt like a draft under every door. Elena Brooks arrived before sunrise and found 2 voicemail messages from employees who had never spoken against Grayson before. One was from a records clerk. The other was from a hearing coordinator. Both said nearly the same thing in different voices. "I have something you may need." By 8:30, Elena was in a small conference room with Maya, Samuel, Linda, and outside counsel. She placed a second folder on the table. "These are not all formal complaints," Elena said, her hands folded tightly. "Some are notes from supervisors. Some are emails people sent and then withdrew. Some are calendar entries from meetings that never produced written findings." Samuel opened the folder carefully. "Were these hidden?" Elena swallowed. "They were softened." Maya looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means people learned which words would get ignored and which words would get them punished. So bias became tone. Retaliation became tension. Humiliation became miscommunication." Linda's face hardened. "That language didn't happen by accident." "No," Elena said. "It became a habit." Maya read the first page. An interpreter had asked for extra time to clarify legal terms for an adult defendant who did not speak English well. Grayson's note called the request unnecessary delay. A public defender had objected to repeated interruptions during a hearing. The summary called it personality friction. A self-represented adult had complained that Grayson mocked his confusion over filing procedure. The response said, "No, misconduct found." Maya closed the folder for a moment. Samuel noticed. "You all right?" "No," she said. "But keep going." That answer settled the room. At noon, Clara Bennett called. "I have enough for the next piece, but there is something you should know before it publishes." Maya stepped into her office and put the call on speaker with Samuel beside her. "What is it?" Maya asked. "A second source confirmed Grayson used his cane on your hand." Maya said nothing. Clara continued, gently, but firmly. "I'm not asking you to relive it. I'm asking whether you want to comment before it becomes public." Maya looked at the faint mark that still crossed her knuckles. "Who confirmed it?" "I can't name them yet." "Was it someone in the room?" "Yes." Maya exhaled slowly, then reported accurately. "He struck my hand aside after refusing to shake it. He did not break it. I did not seek medical treatment. But he did it." Samuel watched her with quiet concern. Clara asked, "Do you want to say anything on record?" Maya thought for a moment. "Yes. Say this. The injury to my hand mattered less than the willingness of the room to pretend it had not happened." Clara repeated the sentence to make sure she had it right. When the call ended, Samuel said, "That's going to change the temperature." "It should," Maya replied. "But I still want the pattern first." "It is first now," Samuel said. "The pattern is why the hand matters." By 2, Clara's third article was online. Witnesses say Judge Grayson used cane against Foundation director during meeting. This time, the story did not stay local. National outlets picked it up within an hour. The article described the contact plainly, without melodrama. It quoted Maya's statement. It linked the incident to prior complaints, Elena's documents, and the suspended grant. Within the courthouse, everything tightened. Judge Grayson sat in chambers, reading the article on his tablet. His first emotion was not shame. It was rage at the leak. Martin Hale stood near the desk, pale and quiet. "Who told her?" Grayson demanded. "I don't know. You were outside the room." "Yes, Judge." "Then who?" Martin looked at him carefully. "A lot of people saw enough." Grayson stood. "Enough? Enough for what?" I moved her hand aside. She was being insolent. Martin's voice was low. She was offering a handshake. The silence that followed was dangerous. Grayson stared at him. "You should choose your words more carefully." Martin held the notepad tighter. "I am trying to." For a second, neither man moved. Then Grayson's phone rang. It was the chief administrative office. He answered with forced control. "Yes." He listened. His face changed. "When?" Another pause. "I understand." He hung up and looked toward the window. Martin waited. Grayson spoke without turning. "The Judicial Oversight Commission is opening a formal inquiry." Martin closed his eyes briefly. Grayson heard it. "Do not look relieved." "I'm not relieved," Martin said. "I'm tired." At the foundation, the same news arrived in writing. Formal inquiry initiated. Maya read the email twice. Samuel stood beside her. Linda entered with a fresh stack of documents. They want sworn statements from you, Elena, Samuel, and any corroborating witnesses. Maya nodded. Schedule mine. Samuel said, you should prepare for cross-examination. I know. They will question your judgment, your age, your clothing, your motive, and the grant. They already have. This will be sharper. Maya looked at him. Then we stay sharper. That evening, Maya finally went home before dark. Her apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that usually comforted her. She heated soup on the stove, toasted one slice of bread, and turned on the evening news without sound. Her own name appeared in the lower corner of the screen beside Grayson's photo. She turned it off. For the first time all week, she let herself sit without reading, answering, preparing, or deciding. Her phone buzzed. It was Evelyn Carter. I saw the story, Evelyn said. Maya leaned back on the couch. Everyone saw the story. And how is your hand? Better. I didn't ask about the bruise. Maya closed her eyes. Evelyn's voice softened. There is a kind of pain that arrives late because duty stands in its way. Maya did not answer. You don't have to be stoned to be strong, Evelyn said. Maya looked toward the window, where city lights blurred against the glass. I know. Do you? A small, tired smile touched Maya's face. I'm learning. The next morning, a formal notice arrived. The first oversight hearing would be held in 4 days. Maya read the date, then placed the notice in the folder with everything else. The suspension letter, the photographs, the recordings, the witness names, the articles, and the first official sign that the system had finally been forced to look at itself. Across town, Grayson received the same notice. He read it once, then again. This was no longer a news cycle. It was a record, and records, once opened, had a way of asking questions power could not silence. 4 days later, the hearing room was full before 9. It was not a courtroom, but it carried the same weight. Long tables faced a raised panel of oversight commissioners. Microphones waited in straight lines. Reporters filled the back rows. Attorneys whispered over folders. Every chair seemed to hold someone's fear, anger, or unfinished memory. Maya arrived with Samuel and Linda. She wore the same brown coat. Samuel noticed but said nothing until they reached their table. You chose it on purpose. Maya placed her folder down. He chose it first. Linda looked toward the panel. They will ask why. I'll tell them. Across the room, Judge Grayson entered with 2 attorneys. He wore a dark suit, not a robe. Without the robe, he looked less like an institution and more like a man trying to borrow one. For a moment, his eyes met Maya's. He looked away first. The chair of the commission, Margaret Ellison, called the hearing to order. She was in her 60s, with gray hair pinned neatly and a voice that did not need volume to hold control. This inquiry concerns allegations of judicial misconduct, improper contact, and conduct damaging to public confidence in the courts, she said. Grayson's attorney stood immediately. Madam Chair, we object to the characterization of unproven claims as damaging. Ellison looked at him over her glasses. Your objection is noted. Sit down. He sat. The first witness was Elena Brooks. She walked to the table with a folder clutched to her chest. Her voice shook when she stated her name, but it steadied when she began describing the meeting. Miss Williams entered politely. Elena said. She extended her hand. Judge Grayson refused it. Commissioner Ellison asked, what words did he use? Elena swallowed. He told her to put her filthy hand away. The room shifted. And after that, he sprayed sanitizer. Then, when Miss Williams explained she meant the handshake as courtesy, he mocked her clothing. Did physical contact occur? Elena closed her eyes for a brief second. Yes. He used his cane to strike her hand aside. Grayson's attorney rose. Objection. That implies intent. Ellison did not blink. The witness is describing what she observed. Sit down. Elena continued. Quieter now. Miss Williams did not threaten anyone. She did not raise her voice. She tried to explain she was there to discuss the funding agreement. And what did Judge Grayson do? He called her unqualified. He referred to her as a poorly dressed black assistant. Then he ordered security to remove her. Maya sat still. She did not look at Grayson. She looked at Elena, because telling the truth had cost that woman something. When Elena finished, Samuel was called. He took the oath and sat with his hands folded. Commissioner Ellison asked, "Mr. Price, did Judge Grayson contact you after the grant was suspended?" "Yes." "Did you meet with him privately?" "Yes." "Why?" Samuel glanced once at Maya, then back to the panel. "Because he believed Miss Williams could be bypassed. I wanted to know what he would say when he thought she was not in the room." Grayson's attorney stood. "This sounds like an admission of provocation." Samuel turned his head slightly. "I did not provoke him. I listened." Ellison nodded. "Proceed." The video played. Grayson's face appeared on the screen. The room watched him lean over a private table and speak of judicial goodwill, foundation partners, advisory seats, and guiding Maya back to reason. Then came his voice, clear and steady. "Men with your resume shouldn't spend their lives standing behind a 25-year-old girl who doesn't know when to stop." No one moved. On the hearing room screen, Grayson smiled as if the world still belonged to him. In the room, the real Grayson stared at the table. Commissioner Ellison stopped the video. "Mr. Price, what did you understand Judge Grayson to be offering?" Samuel answered without drama. "A trade. Favorable court treatment and personal opportunity in exchange for pressuring Maya Williams to restore the grant and withdraw scrutiny. Did you accept?" "No." "Why?" Samuel's voice tightened slightly. "Because justice is not a private currency." The sentence hung in the room. Then Maya was called. She rose slowly. Samuel touched the edge of the table. Not her arm. Just close enough to remind her she was not alone. Maya took the oath and sat. Commissioner Ellison studied her for a moment. "Miss Williams, why are you wearing the same coat today?" Maya looked down at the brown sleeves, then back up. "Because this was all Judge Grayson needed to see before deciding I was not worthy of a handshake." The hearing room went silent. Grayson's attorney began writing quickly. Maya continued before anyone asked. "I did not suspend the grant because my feelings were hurt. I suspended it because, in a few minutes, a sitting judge showed me how easily dignity could disappear inside a building built to protect it." Ellison asked, "What did you believe that meant for the proposed grant?" Maya opened her folder. Her voice remained clear. "The grant was designed to expand public access for adults who often enter court without money, influence, or legal knowledge. If the culture receiving that money could not respect a representative it mistook for powerless, then the foundation had a duty to pause." Grayson's attorney stood. "Miss Williams, is it possible you interpreted a tense professional exchange through the lens of personal offense?" Maya turned toward him. "No." The answer was so simple that he paused. He tried again. "You are 25, correct?" "Yes." "Do you believe someone your age can fully understand the complexity of court administration?" Maya looked at him calmly. "I understand that a judge should not strike a visitor's hand with a cane." A low murmur moved through the room. The attorney's face tightened. "That was not my question. It was my answer." Commissioner Ellison allowed it. The attorney shifted. "You had the power to affect $500 million. Did that make you feel powerful?" Maya looked at him for a long second. "No. It made me careful. And yet you suspended it. Because careful does not mean cowardly." That ended his rhythm. Ellison leaned forward. "Miss Williams, what do you want from this process?" Maya's voice softened, but it did not weaken. "I want the court to stop calling harm a misunderstanding when it happens to people without titles. I want records reviewed. I want witnesses protected. I want no grant money used to polish a system that has not examined its own conduct." She paused, then added, "And I want this to be bigger than my hand." For the first time that morning, Grayson looked at her. Maya did not look back. The hearing recessed at noon. In the hallway, reporters called her name, but Samuel guided her past them. Elena stood near a vending machine, pale and exhausted. Maya stopped. Elena looked ashamed again. "I told the truth." "Yes," Maya said. "You did. I wish I had done it sooner." Maya held her gauze. "So do I. There was no cruelty in it." That made Elena's eyes fill faster. Samuel opened the door to a smaller waiting room. Inside, Linda handed Maya a bottle of water. "You held up well," Linda said. Maya sat. "I didn't want to hold up. I wanted to be understood." Samuel leaned against the wall. "Today, you were." Outside, the hallway buzzed with reporters, lawyers, and witnesses. Inside, Maya looked at her hand, then at the closed door. The inquiry was not over, but something had changed. Grayson had spent years speaking from above people. Today, for the first time, he had been forced to sit and listen. The hearing resumed at 1:15. By then, the room had changed. In the morning, people had listened to determine whether Maya's account could be believed. In the afternoon, they listened as if the question had become how far the truth would go. Commissioner Ellison called Calvin Reed first. Calvin walked to the witness table in a dark suit that had seen better years but had been pressed with care. He gave his name, his age, and his work as a public defender. His voice was measured, but his hands stayed folded tightly in front of him. "Mr. Reed," Ellison said, "you submitted documentation concerning prior appearances before Judge Grayson. Why?" Calvin looked briefly toward Maya, then back to the panel. "Because I saw what happened to Miss Williams and recognized the room." Ellison tilted her head. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean the kind of room where one person controls the tone and everyone else pretends it is procedure." Grayson shifted in his seat. Calvin described years of interruptions, dismissive remarks, and hearings where poor adults were treated as if confusion were disrespect. He did not exaggerate. He did not claim every ruling was biased. That made his testimony harder to dismiss. "He called me emotional whenever I objected," Calvin said. "Not wrong, not unprepared. Emotional. It was a word meant to make advocacy sound like weakness." Grayson's attorney stood. "Mr. Reed, is it possible Judge Grayson simply expected a high standard of courtroom discipline?" Calvin looked at him. "Discipline corrects behavior. Humiliation teaches people not to speak." The commissioner allowed the answer to stand. Next came Maria Alvarez. She sat with her purse in her lap and her shoulders squared. "I am a certified court interpreter," she said. "My job is not decoration. My job protects due process." She described adult immigrants who needed legal terms clarified, not simplified, and how Grayson treated those requests as delays. She had filed concerns. They returned labeled as scheduling friction or courtroom efficiency issues. "Did you believe your complaints were reviewed fairly?" Ellison asked. Maria shook her head. "No. They were translated into softer words until they no longer meant what happened." That sentence made several reporters write at once. Denise Carter testified after her. She had chosen to appear under her own name that morning. Maya had not known until Denise entered the room. Denise was 46, calm and plainly nervous. She worked with adults who came to court without attorneys, many of them carrying papers they did not understand. She spoke about patterns in Grayson's courtroom: less patience for people without polished language, less tolerance for mistakes, and a habit of treating confusion as defiance. "I kept a spreadsheet," Denise said, almost apologetically. "At first, it was for my own sanity." Ellison leaned forward. "Your sanity?" "Yes, ma'am. When everyone tells you something is normal, you start writing things down to prove to yourself that you are not imagining it." Maya felt that line settle deep in the room. Grayson's attorney tried to challenge her data, but Denise had dates, case categories, complaint references, and follow-up notes. She was not emotional. She was organized. That frightened Grayson more. By late afternoon, the panel turned to the internal handling of complaints. Elena returned to the witness table, this time with documents. Her voice was steadier now. Complaints were rarely destroyed. That would have been too obvious. They were reclassified. Ellison asked, "By whom?" Elena hesitated. The room waited. Then she said, "By senior administrative review, often after input from Judge Grayson's chambers." Grayson's attorney rose sharply. "Objection, speculation." Elena opened a folder. "I have emails." The objection died before Ellison ruled. Copies were entered into the record. Phrases appeared on the screen: courtroom management concern, interpersonal tension, misunderstanding of procedure, no further action recommended. Then one old note appeared near the bottom of the file. Expanded legal aid access may encourage unsuitable individuals to challenge court authority unnecessarily. The name attached was Walter Grayson. The room went cold. Ellison read the sentence aloud once. She did not need to read it twice. Grayson's face had lost its color. His attorney whispered to him, but Grayson seemed not to hear. When the panel asked whether he wished to respond, Grayson stood. For the first time, his confidence looked rehearsed. "I have served this court for more than 30 years," he said. "I have maintained order in difficult rooms, with difficult people, under difficult circumstances. My words have been twisted. My intentions have been misread. I will not apologize for expecting seriousness from those who enter a courthouse." Ellison watched him carefully. "Judge Grayson, did you write the note referring to unsuitable individuals?" Grayson tightened his jaw. "That phrase has been removed from context." "What was the context?" "The preservation of court efficiency." "And who are unsuitable individuals?" He paused too long. Maya did not look away this time. Grayson finally said, "People who misuse access to disrupt lawful process." Calvin Reed gave a bitter, quiet laugh from the witness section. He immediately lowered his eyes, but the sound had already said enough. Ellison turned a page. "Judge Grayson, did you offer Mr. Price favorable treatment for Foundation partners if he helped restore the grant?" "No." Samuel's head lifted. Ellison signaled to the clerk. The video played again, shorter this time. Just the crucial lines. Judicial goodwill. The system remembers its friends. Advisory seats. A 25-year-old girl who doesn't know when to stop. When the video ended, Ellison asked, "Do you still deny making the offer?" Grayson's attorney touched his sleeve, urging caution. Grayson swallowed. Those were informal remarks in a private conversation. Ellison's voice hardened for the first time. "You are a judge. There is no private version of you that is permitted to sell public trust." The room went silent. Grayson sat down slowly. The hearing adjourned just after 5. Outside, cameras waited. This time, Maya did not rush past them. She stopped beside Samuel and Linda at the top of the courthouse steps. A reporter called, "Miss Williams, do you feel vindicated?" Maya looked out over the microphones. "No," another reporter asked. "Then what do you feel?" Maya thought of Calvin's careful suit, Maria's steady hands, Denise's spreadsheet, Elena's shame, and the old note that had finally said plainly what the system had tried to hide. "I feel responsible," she said. "For what?" "For making sure this does not end with one man's resignation and everyone else pretending the building is clean." The reporters shouted more questions, but Samuel guided her away. Across town, Judge Grayson returned to his chambers through a side entrance. Martin Hale was waiting inside, standing beside a stack of preservation notices. Grayson removed his suit jacket and laid it over a chair. "Get out," he said. Martin did not move at first. Grayson turned. "Did you hear me?" "Yes, Judge." Martin's voice was quiet. "I heard you for years." Grayson stared at him. Martin placed his courthouse ID on the desk. "I'll cooperate with oversight." Then he left. For the first time that day, Grayson was truly alone. At the foundation that night, Maya sat with the hearing transcript open in front of her. Samuel brought 2 coffees, but did not tell her to drink one. She looked up. "He'll resign." "Maybe." "No," Maya said. "He will. Men like him leave when staying requires humility." Samuel sat across from her. "And after that?" Maya turned to the window. The city lights looked softer than usual, but she knew better. Nothing had softened. The truth had simply become visible. "After that," she said, "we decide what justice looks like when it is not built around his name." Samuel nodded slowly. The hearing had exposed Grayson. But Maya understood something more difficult now. Removing one man would be the easiest part. Changing what had protected him would take longer. By Monday morning, Judge Walter Grayson's name no longer moved through the courthouse in whispers. It moved through emails, headlines, legal memos, and quiet conversations between people who had spent years lowering their voices around him. The Judicial Oversight Commission issued a temporary suspension order at 8 a.m. Grayson was barred from hearing cases, supervising administrative matters, or contacting witnesses connected to the inquiry. The order did not shout. It did not insult. It simply removed power from a man who had mistaken it for ownership. Maya read the order in Samuel's office. Linda Marsh stood beside the window, arms folded. Temporary suspension, pending final review. Samuel looked at Maya. That's faster than expected. Because the video made delay expensive, Linda said. Maya did not smile. What happens to the people whose cases were in his courtroom? Reassigned, Samuel said. Some will be delayed. That was the part Maya hated. Every consequence, even a necessary one, traveled through ordinary people first. She looked down at the suspension order. Make sure our statement mentions continuity of access. We don't celebrate while people wait longer for hearings. Samuel nodded. I'll draft it. At the courthouse, Elena Brooks stood in the hallway outside Grayson's chambers, while two administrative officials inventoried files. The door was open. For years, that room had felt untouchable. Now it looked smaller, almost plain. Bookshelves, framed certificates, a heavy desk, a cane leaning in the corner like an object that had forgotten its power. Martin Hale was there too, helping identify active case files. He did not look relieved. He looked tired in the honest way people look when fear finally stops holding them upright. Elena stepped beside him. You really turned in your ID? I offered to cooperate, Martin said. They told me to keep working until they decide what to do with me. That sounds like mercy. He gave a faint, bitter smile. It sounds like paperwork. Elena looked at the desk. I keep thinking about that morning. So do I. I should have spoken. Martin closed a file box. We all should have. Neither of them said more. There was no comfort large enough for what they had allowed. By noon, the court administration announced an internal transition team. The press release was careful and bloodless, full of words like continuity, confidence, and review. Clara Bennett published it with context, adding that multiple witnesses had testified to a culture of reclassification and dismissal of complaints. Grayson's attorneys released a statement calling the suspension premature and politically influenced. Maya read that line while eating soup at her desk. Samuel walked in with a sandwich he had clearly bought for her. Not himself. He's going to fight the language, he said. He can fight the language, Maya replied. He can't fight the recordings. He'll say the private meeting was misunderstood. He offered to trade influence. He'll call it relationship management. Maya finally looked up. Then we call it what it was. Samuel placed the sandwich beside her. Eat half. She opened the wrapper. You negotiate like a disappointed uncle. I've been called worse by federal judges. For the first time in days, Maya almost laughed. The small moment mattered. Not because anything was fixed, but because she remembered she was still human outside the crisis. That afternoon, Evelyn Carter came to the foundation. She arrived without ceremony, wearing a dark green coat and carrying a paper bag from a neighborhood bakery. At 58, Evelyn still had the posture of a judge, but her eyes were warmer than any bench she had ever sat behind. Maya met her in the small conference room. Evelyn set the bag down. Corn muffins. People make worse decisions when they forget to eat. Samuel, passing the doorway, said, I've been saying that. Evelyn looked at him. Then say it with baked goods next time. After Samuel left, Maya sat across from her. You saw the suspension? Maya asked. I saw it. And now comes the dangerous part. Maya leaned back. More dangerous than Grayson? Evelyn shook her head. Grayson is simple now. He has been seen. The dangerous part is the system trying to prove he was an exception. Maya was silent. Evelyn continued. They will offer you a resignation, a statement, maybe even an apology. They will hope you accept a clean ending. I don't want a clean ending. Good. Clean endings are often dirty rooms with the lights turned off. Maya looked down at her hand. The bruise had almost disappeared. I keep thinking about everyone who testified, she said. Calvin, Maria, Denise, Elena, even Martin. They were all carrying pieces of the same truth. And now? Now I'm afraid the public will move on once Grayson leaves. Evelyn nodded. Then give the public somewhere else to look. That sentence stayed with Maya. Later that day, the foundation board met by emergency video conference. Some members wanted to permanently withdraw the grant and redirect the money to other states. Others worried about punishing the same adults the project was meant to help. A board member from Chicago spoke first. "Maya, if we keep any portion of the money in New York, critics will say we rewarded the court after misconduct." Another member responded, "If we pull it all, the people who needed access lose again." The screen filled with serious faces, most of them older, experienced, and cautious. Maya listened until they finished. Then she said, "We should not restore the old grant." The room quieted. "But we should not abandon the people it was meant to serve," she continued. "The money should remain available only through a new structure, independent from Grayson's office, independent from the old review chain, and tied to public accountability." Samuel, sitting beside her, wrote a note. "New fund?" Maya glanced at it, then spoke the idea aloud. "We build an equal dignity framework, independent oversight, public data, protected reporting, mandatory anti-bias training, transparent meeting records, no private influence conversations, no administrative reclassification of harm without outside review." One older board member leaned closer to his camera. "That is no longer a grant. That is a reform instrument." "Yes," Maya said. "That is what it should have been all along." The board did not vote that day, but the direction had changed. By evening, Maya returned alone to the conference room where the files were stacked. She opened Denise Carter's spreadsheet again, then Calvin's statement, then Maria's complaint copies, then Elena's documents. The paper trail no longer looked like separate injuries. It looked like a map. Samuel appeared in the doorway. Board seemed open. "They're cautious. They should be." Maya closed the folder. "I don't want Grayson to become the whole story. He won't if you build the next part." She looked at him. "We..." Samuel accepted the correction with a nod. "We..." Across Brooklyn, Grayson sat in his apartment with the suspension order on the table. His home was expensive, quiet, and suddenly useless. No clerk, no robe, no line of people waiting outside his door. His phone had stopped ringing except for attorneys. On television, a retired judge said, "The question is no longer whether Judge Grayson behaved poorly. The question is, how many people allowed the behavior to become culture?" Grayson turned the television off. For a moment, there was only silence. Not the silence he once commanded, the silence that remains when command is gone. At the foundation, Maya turned off the conference room light and looked once more at the city beyond the glass. Grayson had been suspended. The court had been shaken. But Evelyn was right. The system would try to make him an exception. Maya's next task was to make sure the truth became a structure no one could quietly fold away. The next morning, Maya wrote 3 words at the top of a yellow legal pad. "Structure outlives outrage." She stared at them while the conference room slowly filled. Samuel arrived first, carrying coffee and a folder of proposed oversight models. Linda came next with a red pen tucked behind one ear. Evelyn joined by speakerphone, refusing video because, as she put it, "I have already earned the right not to be seen before my second cup of coffee." Maya almost smiled. Samuel placed a draft on the table. "The Equal Dignity Framework, version 1. Linda sat down. "Version 1 is generous. This is a skeleton with shoes." Maya picked up the draft. "Then let's give it a spine." The plan was simple in purpose and difficult in practice. The $500 million would not return to the old court structure. It would be held until a new, independent body could govern its use. No judge's office would control allocation. No administrator could bury complaints through softer language. Every meeting tied to funding would be logged. Every complaint pattern would be reviewed by outside counsel. Every quarter, data would be published in plain English, not hidden inside reports no working adult had time to decode. Samuel read from the draft. "Protected reporting for staff, attorneys, interpreters, and court users." Maya nodded. "Add vendors and contracted service providers. People see things from the edges." Linda added the note. "Mandatory anti-bias training?" "Not just training," Evelyn said through the speaker. "Training is what institutions buy when they want credit for sitting in a room." Maya leaned forward. "Then make it performance-linked. Training, evaluation, follow-up. and public compliance summaries. Samuel wrote quickly. That will make the court uncomfortable. It should, Maya said. Comfort helped build this. By late morning, the framework had taken shape. The proposed fund would become the Maya Williams Equal Dignity Fund only if the board approved the name. Maya resisted that part immediately. No, she said. Not my name. Samuel looked up. The board suggested it because your action triggered the reform. My action paused money. The witnesses created the record. Linda tapped her pen on the table. Names matter, Maya. A name can protect a purpose. Then name it for the purpose. Evelyn's voice came through the speaker, calm and firm. Equal Dignity Justice Fund. Maya looked at the phone. That I can live with. Samuel crossed out the old title. Equal Dignity Justice Fund. The name settled over the room, plain and strong. At noon, the board reconvened. Some members worried about political backlash. Others worried that a public accountability structure would scare away court partners in future states. Maya listened until the concerns began repeating themselves. Then she spoke. If a court system refuses accountability because it feels embarrassed, it was not ready for reform money. And if our partners are afraid of public records, they are not partners. They are risks. An older board member from Atlanta leaned toward his camera. That is a hard line. Maya nodded. It should be. What about the adults waiting for services? Another member asked. The legal clinics, the interpreters, the access upgrades? They are exactly why we must do this correctly, Maya said. People who have waited for justice should not be handed a prettier version of the same broken hallway. The vote did not come easily, but it came, unanimous. The old grant structure was dead. The Equal Dignity Justice Fund would replace it. Samuel exhaled for the first time in an hour. Linda removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Evelyn, still on speaker, said, Good. Now the real work can begin. Maya looked at the approved framework on the screen and felt no triumph, only responsibility. That afternoon, the foundation issued a public statement. It was brief and direct. The $500 million would remain committed to justice access, but only under a new independent structure requiring transparent oversight, public data, protected reporting, and strict rules against private influence. The statement ended with one sentence from Maya. This money was never meant to reward power. It was meant to serve people. By 3, the sentence was everywhere. At the courthouse, Elena read it at her desk and quietly printed a copy. She pinned it above her computer where she could see it every day. Martin Hale, now cooperating with oversight, saw the statement on his phone while sitting in a records office, surrounded by boxes of old case files. He read Maya's line twice, then went back to labeling documents with steadier hands. Grayson read it from his apartment. His attorney had emailed the statement with a short note. This complicates the narrative. Grayson stared at the screen. What narrative? That he had served the court for 30 years? That one young woman had misunderstood him? That a private conversation had been twisted? Every defense seemed smaller now that the money was not gone, but redirected. Maya had not burned the house down. She had changed the locks. That angered him more. He called his attorney. We need to challenge the foundation's right to restructure the grant. His attorney sighed. Walter, it was their money. It was committed. Conditionally. They are humiliating the court. No, the attorney said carefully. You did that part. Grayson hung up. For a long time, he sat in silence. The apartment clock ticked softly. Outside, traffic moved along the avenue. For the first time in decades, no one was waiting for his ruling. At the foundation, reporters kept calling, but Maya declined interviews. She did agree to one recorded statement for the foundation website. Samuel stood behind the camera with Linda beside him. Maya sat at a simple table, not behind a podium. She wore the brown coat over the back of her chair, visible but not worn. The communications director counted down. Maya looked into the lens. Justice should not depend on whether a person enters a room wearing wealth, status, or the right kind of confidence. The Equal Dignity Justice Fund exists because access without dignity is not access. It is permission that can be taken away. She paused, letting the words breathe. To every adult who has ever walked into a courthouse and felt small, confused, dismissed, or unheard, this fund is not a promise that the system will become perfect. It is a commitment that the system will no longer be allowed to hide its failures behind closed doors. The room stayed quiet after she finished. The communications director lowered the camera. That was good. Maya stood. I hope it was useful. Evelyn called that evening. I saw your statement, she said. And you did not make yourself the hero. I'm not. No, Evelyn said. But you are learning something important. What? That leadership is not refusing the spotlight. Sometimes it is standing in it long enough to turn it toward the right people. Maya sat by her apartment window that night, with a bowl of soup cooling on the table and the city glowing beyond the glass. Her phone was finally silent. The bruise on her hand had faded to almost nothing, but she knew the mark had done its work. It had opened a record. The record had opened a hearing. The hearing had opened a structure, and the structure, if they built it right, might open a door for someone who would never know her name. The final review took place on a gray Thursday morning, 2 weeks after the first hearing. By then, Judge Walter Grayson had become a man surrounded by documents he could no longer control. His words were in transcripts. His private offer to Samuel was in evidence. His note about unsuitable individuals had been read by people who once praised his discipline. The robe was gone from his shoulders, and without it, his authority seemed to shrink with every passing day. The Judicial Oversight Commission met in a formal chamber downtown. It was smaller than the hearing room, but colder, with fewer spectators and more silence. Maya sat beside Samuel and Linda. Elena sat 2 rows behind them. Calvin Reed, Maria Alvarez, and Denise Carter were there too. Not as witnesses this time, but as people who had earned the right to see the ending. Grayson entered with his attorney. He did not look at Maya. Commissioner Margaret Ellison opened the session with a stack of findings in front of her. This commission has reviewed sworn testimony, internal documents, audio evidence, video evidence, written complaints, administrative classifications, and statements from current and former court personnel, she said. Grayson's attorney stood. Madam Chair, before conclusions are read, my client wishes to submit that he has served the court faithfully for more than 30 years. Ellison looked at him. Service is part of the record. So is misconduct. Sit down. The attorney sat. Ellison continued. Her voice was steady, almost plain, and that made each word heavier. The commission finds that Judge Walter Grayson violated standards of judicial conduct by using degrading language toward an invited representative of a public interest foundation, by initiating improper physical contact with her hand, using his cane, by ordering her removal from a scheduled meeting without cause, and by later engaging in an improper private conversation, offering court-related benefits in exchange for influence over grant approval. Grayson's jaw tightened. Ellison turned a page. The commission further finds credible evidence of a broader pattern of dismissive treatment toward attorneys, interpreters, staff, and self-represented adults, particularly where race, income, language access, or social status shaped courtroom perception. No one moved. Maya felt Samuel shift beside her, but he said nothing. Ellison looked directly at Grayson. A courthouse cannot demand public trust while privately teaching people that dignity is conditional. For the first time, Grayson raised his head. My words were imperfect, he said, forcing calm into his voice. But I never intended to harm the institution. Ellison's expression did not change. Intent does not erase injury, and in this matter, your subsequent conduct showed not regret, but an attempt to preserve influence through improper means. Grayson's attorney touched his arm, but Grayson kept speaking. This has become political. Maya watched him carefully. He still did not understand. Even now, he needed an enemy larger than himself, because the truth alone felt too small to blame. Ellison replied, No, Judge Grayson. This became public because private accountability failed. The sentence settled over the room. Then came the recommendation, immediate continuation of suspension, referral for disciplinary removal proceedings, referral of the private meeting evidence to appropriate ethics and prosecutorial authorities, mandatory review of complaint handling procedures, and protection for cooperating witnesses. Grayson did not wait for the next question. He stood. His attorney whispered, "Walter, don't." Grayson ignored him. "I will not allow my life's work to be reduced to one meeting and a politically motivated campaign." Ellison folded her hands. "Your life's work is not being reduced, Judge. It is being examined." That stopped him. For a moment, the man who had interrupted so many others had no answer. The session adjourned shortly after. Outside the chamber, reporters waited. Grayson's attorney made a brief statement about reviewing options. Grayson stood beside him, silent, his eyes fixed on some point beyond the cameras. Maya did not speak to the press. Not that day. As she walked toward the exit, Elena approached her. "I thought I'd feel relieved," Elena said. Maya looked at her. "Do you?" Elena shook her head. "I feel responsible. That may be better." Elena accepted that with a small nod. Behind them, Calvin Reed was speaking quietly with Maria Alvarez. Denise Carter stood with both hands around a paper cup of coffee, looking tired but lighter. Samuel watched them from a few feet away. Linda leaned toward Maya. "This part is nearly done." Maya replied, "The visible part." By the next morning, Grayson's resignation letter arrived. It was brief. It cited health, family privacy, and the desire to spare the court further distraction. It did not mention Maya. It did not mention Samuel. It did not mention the cane, the video, the complaints, or the people who had finally been heard. Samuel read it aloud in Maya's office. "He calls it a distraction," he said, lowering the page. Maya looked out the window. "Of course he does." Linda sat across from her. "The press will ask for a reaction." Maya turned back. "Say we acknowledge the resignation, but reform does not resign with him." Samuel wrote that down. "Good. No victory language," Maya added. Linda nodded. "No celebration. There are adults whose cases were delayed, staff who risked jobs, witnesses who carried this for years. We don't dance on the ruins. We rebuild." That became the foundation's statement by noon. At the courthouse, Grayson packed his chambers under administrative supervision. No one said much. His books went into boxes. His framed certificates came down. His nameplate was removed from the door by a maintenance worker who had probably walked past it for years without thinking about the man behind it. Martin Hale stood near the file cabinet. Grayson noticed him. "You're here to watch?" "I'm here to make sure active records stay with the court." Grayson looked around the room. You all turned quickly. Martin's face was pale, but steady. "No, Judge." We turned slowly. That was the problem. Grayson had no answer. When he left the courthouse, he used the main doors. Perhaps pride demanded it. Perhaps he wanted one last walk through the building, as if it still belonged to him. No one stopped him. No one shouted. No one touched him. A few people looked away. A few watched openly. Elena stood near the operations desk and did not hide. Grayson descended the stone steps carefully, one hand on the railing. The same railing Maya had grabbed when pain and shock nearly took her balance. He did not know that. Or perhaps he did. Either way, the iron held him without judgment. At the bottom, a black car waited at the curb. He paused once and looked back at the courthouse. For 30 years, he had believed the building made him larger. Now it only showed the size of what he had lost. Across town, Maya watched the news clip without sound. Grayson appeared smaller on the screen than she expected. Not harmless, not forgiven, simply diminished. Samuel stood beside her. "Are you all right?" Maya turned off the television. "I'm thinking about what Evelyn said." "Which part?" "That the system would try to make him an exception." Samuel nodded. "It already is. Then we don't let the next headline be his resignation. What do we make it?" Maya reached for the Equal Dignity Justice Fund proposal. The opening. In the weeks that followed, the court administration agreed to negotiate under the new framework. Not because it wanted to, but because the public record had made refusal impossible. Independent oversight became non-negotiable. Complaint reclassification required outside review. Data summaries would be public. Meetings tied to funding would be logged. Staff and court users would have protected reporting channels. The old grant was gone. The new fund had teeth. One evening, after a long negotiation session, Maya returned to the foundation office and found Samuel standing by the conference room window. He turned as she entered. They accepted the public data requirement. Maya stopped. All of it? All of it. For the first time in weeks, she let herself breathe fully. Samuel smiled faintly. Careful. That almost looked like satisfaction. It's not satisfaction, she said. It's relief, with better posture. He laughed quietly. Maya looked at the table where the first suspension letter had been written, the same table where they had watched Grayson on video, where Elena's documents had been opened, where the fund had been rebuilt line by line. So now we build the center, Samuel said. Maya nodded. Now we build the door. Outside, New York moved into evening. Offices emptied. Trains filled. Courthouse lights glowed across the boroughs. Grayson was gone from the bench. But for Maya, the real ending had never been his fall. It would be the first person who walked into a legal center funded by the money he had tried to control and found. Not contempt, but a chair, a clear form, a patient voice, and a hand extended in welcome. 6 months later, the courthouse steps looked different to Maya. The stone was the same. The gray iron railing was the same. The columns still rose above Brooklyn with the old confidence of public buildings. Traffic still pushed along the street below, and the wind still moved between the doors hard enough to make people pull their coats tighter. But Maya did not stop at the third step. She walked past it. Her hand brushed the railing once, not because she needed it, but because she remembered. Samuel walked beside her with a folder under his arm. You all right? Maya looked at the place where she had nearly fallen months before. Yes. You paused. I was just checking whether the step had changed. Samuel glanced down. And? It hasn't. He smiled. But you have? Maya did not answer, because the truth was more complicated than that. She had not become harder. She had become clearer. There was a difference. They were not entering the old courthouse that morning for a hearing. They were crossing the plaza toward a newly renovated building beside it. A former administrative annex now open to the public as the Equal Dignity Justice Center. A modest blue banner hung above the entrance. The Equal Dignity Justice Center, built for every adult who was ever told they did not belong in the room. There was no red carpet. Maya had refused it. There were no champagne glasses, no donor wall covered in gold names, no orchestra, no expensive luncheon. Instead, there were folding chairs, fresh coffee in large silver urns, legal aid tables, interpreter stations, plain language forms, and volunteers greeting adults as they came through the door. That was what Maya wanted, not a ceremony that admired justice, a place that practiced it. Inside, Elena Brooks stood near the welcome desk, wearing a navy suit and a volunteer badge. She was no longer director of court operations. After the inquiry, she had transferred into the new accountability office created under the fund. It was a smaller title with less power, but Elena looked steadier than Maya had ever seen her. When Maya approached, Elena extended her hand. For a second, both women understood the weight of that gesture. Maya shook it. Elena's eyes softened. Good morning, Miss Williams. Good morning, Elena. I'm glad you came back. Maya looked around the room. I'm glad there was something worth coming back to. Nearby, Calvin Reed was speaking with two young legal fellows, explaining how not to make people feel stupid for not knowing courtroom language. Maria Alvarez was arranging interpreter schedules at a front desk marked language access. Denise Carter stood beside a row of computers, helping an older man navigate a civil filing portal. Everyone there was an adult. Everyone there had a reason to understand why dignity mattered. Linda Marsh approached with a paper cup of coffee. The first walk-in came at 8:06. Maya looked surprised. Before opening? He said he saw the lights on. What did staff do? Linda smiled. They opened the door. Maya looked toward the entrance. That was the victory. Not Grayson's resignation. Not the headlines. Not the public statements. A door had opened early because someone outside needed help. The brief program began at 10. Samuel stood at the small podium, though Maya had insisted it stay at floor level instead of on a stage. 6 months ago, Samuel said, a grant was suspended because the foundation could not ignore what had been revealed inside a courthouse meeting room. Today, that money returns with conditions, with oversight, and with a purpose stronger than reputation. He turned slightly toward Maya. This center exists because Maya Williams understood something many institutions forget. Access without dignity is not justice. It is permission. Maya lowered her eyes for a moment. She still disliked praise when the work was unfinished. Samuel continued. The Equal Dignity Justice Fund now requires public data, independent review, protected reporting, open meeting records, and plain language access standards. That may sound administrative. It is not. It is moral architecture. When the applause came, it was warm but not excessive. Mostly people nodded, older people especially. They knew what it meant to build something useful instead of loud. Then Maya stepped forward. She had not prepared a long speech. She had written one, then cut it in half, then cut it again. She looked at the room. Samuel, Elena, Calvin, Maria, Denise, Linda, Evelyn Carter sitting in the front row with her hands folded over a green coat, and dozens of adults who had come not for history, but for help. Maya began quietly. The first time I came to this block for the project review, I thought I was evaluating a grant. I was wrong. I was evaluating a culture. No one moved. I learned that a building can have flags, seals, judges, and rules, and still forget the person standing in front of it. I learned that silence can become policy if enough people are afraid to interrupt it. I learned that harm often survives by changing its name. She looked toward Elena, not accusingly, but honestly. Bias becomes tone. Humiliation becomes misunderstanding. Fear becomes professionalism. And after a while, people stop asking whether something is wrong because the paperwork says it was handled. Evelyn nodded once from the front row. Maya continued. This center cannot fix every failure. No building can, but it can make one promise. If you come here as an adult seeking help, you will not be treated as an interruption to someone else's importance. You will be spoken to clearly. You will be heard with patience. And if this place fails you, there will be a record no one can quietly rename. That was when the applause came stronger. Maya waited, then finished. This money was never meant to reward power. It was meant to serve people. After the program, Evelyn Carter walked over with a corn muffin wrapped in a napkin. You finally gave a speech without trying to disappear inside it, Evelyn said. Maya accepted the muffin. That sounds like praise with supervision. It is. Samuel joined them. Judge Carter. You should know she tried to remove her own name from every document. Evelyn looked at Maya. Good instinct. Bad strategy. Maya sighed. I'm outnumbered. You are advised. Evelyn corrected. Across the room, a volunteer opened the front door for a man carrying a folder thick with papers. Denise greeted him and asked what he needed. He apologized for not understanding the forms. Denise smiled and said, That's why we're here. Maya heard it. That's why we're here. Simple words. Clean words. Better than any headline. Later that afternoon, across the state, Walter Grayson sat alone at a kitchen table in a rented house far north of the city. His apartment in Manhattan had been sold. His name had been removed from legal panels, charity boards, and conference invitations. His attorneys still spoke in careful terms, but no one spoke of return. A business journal lay open in front of him. On the page was a photograph of Maya standing inside the new center, not smiling widely, just looking steady. The headline read, The Young Woman Who Made a Court Answer for Its Own Conduct. Grayson read the article twice. It mentioned the handshake, the cane, the suspension, the video with Samuel, the resignation, the fund, the center. It did not call Maya vengeful. It did not call him misunderstood. It simply told the order of things. That was the part he hated most. He closed the magazine and placed it face down on the table. Outside the window, a quiet street stretched empty under a pale sky. For months, he had told himself Maya destroyed him. But alone in that rented kitchen, with no robe, no chambers, no clerk, no title moving ahead of his name, a harder truth finally sat down across from him. Maya had not destroyed him. Samuel had not betrayed him. The camera had not invented him. The record had only revealed what he had trusted power to hide. Back in Brooklyn, evenings settled over the Equal Dignity Justice Center. The coffee urns were nearly empty. Volunteers stacked chairs. Interpreters gathered schedules. A few people still sat at tables, getting help with forms they had carried for too long. Maya stood near the entrance, watching the last light touch the gray railing outside. Samuel came beside her. "Do you regret it?" She looked at him. "No." Then she looked toward the open door, where a volunteer shook hands with a man leaving with a folder and visible relief. "But I wish they had shaken my hand before they made the whole country see why they wouldn't." Samuel said nothing. He did not need to. Maya stepped outside for a moment. The courthouse stood across the plaza, still old, still imperfect, still carrying histories no single fund could erase. But beside it, the new center glowed with warm light. People often think power lives in the robe of a judge, but that day, real power had lived in the hand he refused to shake. A young hand, a black hand, a plain hand, a hand that never had to become a fist to change an entire system. And now, because that hand had not closed in anger, it had opened a door. The lesson of this story is that true power is not found in a title, a robe, a courtroom, or a position of authority. True power lives in dignity, integrity, and the courage to stand calmly when others try to make you feel small. Maya Williams did not answer cruelty with cruelty. She answered it with truth, discipline, and action. Her story reminds us that prejudice often hides behind polite systems, but once the truth is recorded and brave people stop staying silent, even the most powerful institutions can be forced to change. Justice is not real when it only protects the powerful. Justice becomes real when it finally listens to the people who were told they did not belong. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, I would truly love to hear your thoughts on the storytelling, the emotional pacing, or whatever stayed with you after listening. Every comment you share helps make the next stories more honest, moving, and meaningful. And if you have a powerful or meaningful story of your own, please do not hesitate to send it to the channel. It may become the next story to touch and inspire thousands of others. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.